How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the stream. Today, wow, chat's pretty active today. How's it going, everyone? So today, we've got a special one for you. We've got me. I'm here every week. You don't care about me, but we've got Will over to my. I guess this is my left. How's it going, Will?
Pretty good, pretty good. Yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. We've also got Steph, the cat of nine tails, playing Humankind behind us. So
In theory, but I'm having that weird parsec issue again, where it's like having my mouse cursor on both screens, so I need to
oh yeah,
leave parsec and reconnect, I think.
okay, fair enough, fair enough. Troubleshooting. Everybody, just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So this is a stream where we're going to be going over some of the feedback that we got from the Victor OpenDev. Most of you, I'm guessing, were able to play it, I guess, a couple weeks ago now, right, Will? Was it all the way in? Was it in April? It ended in May, right?
Yeah. It's one of those strange things.
Yeah.
It hasn't been so long, but we've already been working so hard on fixing all the things that were broken up. Sorry, lapses that were brought up. The things that were broken as well, obviously. The things
Fair
that were
enough.
broken up,
Yeah.
less so. But yeah. It's been a few weeks now.
Yeah. Chat saying it ended beginning of May. It feels like a long time ago and not very long ago at the same time.
It's the thing about COVID. It stretches time in weird ways.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, we're going to be talking about that today, some of the feedback that we got from it, but also kind of some of the things that we're doing to address that feedback. Sort of near the end of this stream, we're going to be doing a short Q&A. So if you guys want to toss your questions in the chat, Steph, the cat of nine tails, is going to be taking a look at those, trying to save them so that we can get to them at the end. So at any point in the middle of the stream, if you have a question, send it on through. We'll try our best to get to it. If we don't get to it, you can shoot it over to us on Twitter. We're pretty active there. So yeah, I think we can get into it. Steph, did you get a chance to come through on Parsec? Because I can accept you now. And I think you're muted if you're talking.
Technical difficulties, as you know, it
It
wouldn't be
happens.
fun without technical difficulties.
It's always.
It wouldn't be a stream. That's how we prove to you that we're live.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you'd be like, this is obviously pre-recorded.
Yeah,
Everything.
sorry, I had Discord issues as well to push to talk in one.
Yeah.
No, I
No
was
worries.
trying to connect, and twice already it timed out because you didn't see the notification, I guess. So
Oh, okay.
I'll try again now.
Here, one sec. I just exited and reshared, so you can do it. And then now let's try that.
Do it.
Good to go? Great. All right. So back to it. It's not an amplitude stream without technical difficulties. It happens all the
No.
time. Salterius just said it in the chat, so there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Will, so let's talk about the Victor OpenDev. What were your overall thoughts on it? What were some things like validated for you? Were there any surprises that came up for you? Kind of what are your overall thoughts?
So I mean, going back to Lucy, which was the previous one, we knew that we had some balance issues, right? We knew that in terms of pacing, things were really kind of exploding. People were covering the territory in districts, so there was obviously a lot of work to do there to make sure that things felt a little bit more, a little bit more interesting. Because at some point, if you have too much money, if you have too many resources, you're no longer making interesting choices. So we really reined things back in. That was kind of our primary concern for Victor.
Right.
And I think to the point where we actually reined them in slightly too much a little bit before release and went back a little bit. In any case, the the feedback that we've gotten from players is that, you know, while things aren't perfect yet, they're certainly better than they were. You know, especially in terms of, you know, technology, the pacing is a little bit nicer. There are still some things.
Will, one sec. I'm just going to turn you up here. Steph, can I take control of the mouse for a
Yeah,
second?
sure.
I'm going to turn...
I can also speak more loudly and project my voice outward to you.
That would be
Speaking
also...
from the diaphragm.
Do some Shakespeare for us? Okay.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
Wow,
This went to a weird
amazing.
place.
How's that, chat? Is Will sounding a little bit better?
Yeah, sorry. I'll try to articulate for you better. It's hard when you're an Australian and used to flies going into your mouth whenever you open it. But I will make an effort. Yeah. So balance. Balance is something that, you know, or, yeah, balance and pacing as a whole. It's something that has improved. You know, we note that there are still issues, you know, in terms of like the amount of money that people can acquire, especially from vassals, the population buyout being a little bit overpowered, you know, the procession being overpowered, you know, you get a lot of money from trade, and stability isn't kind of enough of a restrictive factor once you unlock the commons quarter and things like that. So, you know, we sifted through all this feedback, and obviously Kat was absolutely marvelous, you know, with the team as well. You know, essentially going through, you know, reams and reams and reams, posts, videos, etc., to compile all
You
this
know,
stuff.
I can't take all the credit there because, you know, I do have a community management assistant who helped greatly, because we had the full list is over 1,000 separate feedback entries. I wouldn't have been able to manage that all by myself
It was
in
huge.
the time between the OpenDev and now. It would probably have taken me until sometime next month.
Yeah, and you know, this last couple of weeks we've been going over them point by point with Roman, with the big boss, chief creative officer, and John Max, creative director. You know, looking at point by point, okay, you know, what are we going to do? You know, how are we going to help for this? So, it's been really, really interesting. So yeah, I think on that front, very clear that we're going in the right direction, but there's a little bit further to go. In terms of, I guess, disappointments, I feel like the naval gameplay. I would have liked to showcase it a little bit more. I don't think it kind of shone as nicely as we were hoping. So that's, you know, also something we need to work on moving forward. So yeah, on the whole, I think it was a very successful OpenDev.
Yeah.
Obviously, plenty more work to go, but.
Well, yeah, it definitely seems like, I don't know, how many OpenDevs have we had now? 4 OpenDevs, yeah.
Yeah, I think...
let me think. We had, you know, the original OpenDev, then there was the Stadia OpenDev, and then there was Lucy, and then there was Victor. So yes,
yeah. So it definitely feels like it's improving with each iteration, and the feedback that we've gotten is just, I don't know, it seems like a real driving force for that. So you guys are awesome in chat. Just a heads up.
You know, it's kind of a golden rule of game development, right? Like the more builds you put in front of players, the better the game is going to get. You know. So yeah, I think we've done pretty well on that front, and also, you know, the OpenDev kind of format I think is pretty good because, you know, we can kind of focus our efforts. We can have you know, a questionnaire at the end. Questionnaire, is that how you pronounce that? Survey. I'm going to say survey because the French part of my brain wants to make weird Q sounds.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have the survey, we have, you know, analytics, we have player feedback, and, you know, each one of these OpenDevs at the end of it, you know, we've walked away with like this huge amount of information about where to go next. You know, so it's been great.
Awesome. Cool. So do you want to talk a little bit more specifically about some of the main pieces of feedback that came about from this OpenDev?
Yeah. So let me think. Aside from the pacing, which is obviously a big one, kind of snowballing, uh, which kind of often resulted in the player kind of outpacing the AI. So these are all things we very much have in mind that we're working on. Um, I feel like players are engaging a lot more with the diplomacy system, which I'm really happy about. But with that engagement comes a degree of frustration with those parts of it that aren't quite at that level in terms of like accessibility UX. Like obviously in crisis resolution, war resolution, there are certain things that you can't kind of like zoom to this, so you can't tell like what territory are we talking about here. So these are things that we need to work on. And yeah, let me think. We've had talk about the.
Sorry,
You go.
one sec here. Chat, how's the stream looking here? Are we having more technical issues? Steph, I'm gonna take control of the mouse again. Sorry about this, guys. Bad, choppy. Interesting.
I can keep quoting Shakespeare if you.
It's always nice.
Obviously, for us as a studio, the most relevant Shakespeare quote is probably, "Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him, Horatio," which is, the part that most people misquote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew him, Horatio. Yeah.
No, I think a lot of people quote it as "I knew him well,"
Yeah.
rather than addressing the person who's there.
One sec here.
So the one that always sticks with me is one in high school. We had to read Macbeth.
Oh yeah.
And the one that stuck with me is when Macbeth philosophizes about the fact that he just killed the king, but actually he doesn't really want to be king, and so he's like, I have no spurs to prick the sides of my intent. They're only vaulting ambition that overleaps itself and falls on the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one everyone remembers is the I am in blood so far steeped in that to go on where is tedious, to go back where is tedious is going onward. Or I think it's o'er, like O apostrophe E-R.
Yeah.
Which you're supposed to understand as onward somehow. Yeah, you go. Sorry, I'm just providing filler.
That is all good, Steph. I think I'm gonna. I have something set up here for our cameras. So I think we can just leave the gameplay off, and then we can just chat with William, and then whenever we need some gameplay in the background, we can do that. Just because I don't want to. Yeah. Okay. So 1 second, because it's not the game. I think it might be Parsec that is doing something here. So
yeah, that's entirely fine by me. That also gives me more mental capacity to keep an eye on chat and catch the questions.
Yes, no worries. 1 second here. Boom. There we go. So this should be better, chat. Fixed. And if you do want to see gameplay, there's plenty of stuff on YouTube and all over the place right now. We just had a nice little event for creators and press to come out and play it, so you can check that out.
But and that was a new map and new stuff with regard to Victor. So we have been super busy putting all that together.
Yes.
But yes, it's interesting for the creators who played Victor and who played who participated in the press event. Talking about what changes have been made.
Yeah.
And I'm quite proud to say that there are already a number of things that we improved, for that next build, which is slightly insane when you think about the short number of weeks between the two. But there you go.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, I'm very sorry for interrupting you. We were talking about kind of the main pieces of feedback that came through.
Yeah, so I was saying, the in terms of like the crisis and war resolution screens, clearly, and this came back from a lot of people, there are things that we need to do to make it easier to kind of connect what you're seeing in the list of demands or in the list of kind of terms of surrender and what you're seeing on the map. So we're going to be working on making that connection a bit easier, so you don't have to leave the diplomacy screen to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one came up quite a lot.
Yeah, but I think we had those improvements planned since Lucy, but since
Yeah,
it's UI stuff, it isn't super quick to do, so it wasn't
it-
ready for Victor. Much
yeah.
apologies to all the Victor players, but yes, we do plan a Zoom 2 button.
Yeah.
Yes.
These were definitely things that we very much wanted to have in the build, and that kind of just didn't make it. So yeah, we're working on it. Let me think. The tenants got a bit of a nerf just before Victor, but not enough of a nerf.
Yeah.
There's still that kind of quadratic aspect between like the holy sites and the followers. So that needs to be reined in. At the same time, whether it's tenets or civics, there's this feeling that they may not be kind of exciting enough. That maybe in terms of like the narrative choice you're making, it's interesting, but the actual gameplay effect isn't that inspiring. So there's going to need to be a bit of a pass on that. I think probably for the civics to differentiate the two options a little bit more and to make them a bit more potent, and for the tenets, we'll see about making sure that adopting someone's religion isn't necessarily, the bonuses need to be a bit more contextual, at least according to the feedback we've got. And I kind of agree with that. At the moment, the tenet bonuses tend to be pretty general. So no matter whose religion you adopt, you're kind of still happy with the bonuses that you got. Whereas, one could imagine, if the bonuses only affect coastal water tiles, and I have no coastal waters, well, that's not a religion that's particularly interesting to me. So, we'll see what we can do about that. But in any case, there's more, I guess, color that could be found in this content. There's a certain amount of feedback in terms of civics also about the speed of unlock of civics points with regard to the civics themselves. So it's always a point of kind of difficulty, because the civics themselves are unlocked based on meeting specific preconditions. We wanted you to be asked these questions when it made sense. From a narrative standpoint, we didn't want that kind of disconnect between what the game is telling you in terms of narrative and what's actually happening in your game. But that means that we have a limited control over the pace of unlock
Right.
of the civics. And so there's a kind of disconnect between the civics points and the civics availability that often means either you have no civics points and a lot unlocked, or you have a lot of civics points and none unlocked. So that was brought up, and these are things, I don't want to kind of spoil too much, the things that we're thinking of doing, because I think we'll kind of discuss that in block
But
afterwards. But
that's an interesting point that you make. Is that something that you guys focus on quite a bit? Is trying to make everything that happens in humankind as cohesive as possible, not to, I guess, not to like make it feel like it's just a feature that's thrown in here. Maybe that it feels like it's something that makes sense and is connected to another decision that you've made potentially.
yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing about when you look at something like Endless Space 2, you have this really awesome narrative, right? The story of the Cravers, for instance, and you'll be following that quest line. And the quest line will be telling you things that are happening. But the trouble with that kind of static kind of string of pearls type approach to narrative is that there can be a huge disconnect between what you are living as a player and what the game is telling you that your faction is going through. And that can create a kind of disconnect where you're sort of experiencing both of them as two separate things, almost like eating a pie while watching a Twitch stream. It's not
Right.
it's not the same experience, even though both can be nice. It could be good pie, it could be good Twitch stream.
Yeah.
So the idea is kind of like the equivalent would be like a Twitch stream where you're eating a pie and like on the Twitch stream, they're talking about the ingredients that are in the pie, and they're like, "Yeah, let's eat this pie together." That's kind of the goal here.
That's an idea for a stream. Let's do that here.
Yeah, I think there's like a rule of the internet, which is that already exists. I'm certain that there is like a whole category on Twitch of just like, let's eat pie together.
Right.
Twitch
yeah.
eats pie.
It's a great
well,
idea.
if you've ever, seen our streams, especially when Doodle Goop shows up and tortures Rogan and I because he knows we haven't had dinner yet.
Yes.
It always is about food.
Our streams usually fall like on dinner time. And so me and Kat, by the end of it, are like, damn, we need some food. Yeah.
Looking at the deer on the screen and going, that would be nice.
Exactly.
Yes. So I mean, for all the kind of the static narrative in Humankind, it's broken up into events. The events are obviously inspired by real world historical events. So we're not completely pulling things out of thin air. And the idea is that by doing this kind of quality-based narrative system where you're checking qualities, so you're checking prerequisites to make sure that you're showing this piece of narrative content when it makes sense, when it is consistent with what the player is experiencing, and as a result, that instead of creating a disconnect and kind of snapping you out of the experience, it actually makes the experience that much more immersive.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's something that we're really trying to work on, and the civics are part of that same system. Like, we don't want you thinking about like, hey, should we have professional soldiers or professional soldiers or people who are I can't remember exactly what the two options are, but essentially, should we pay people or should they be like from birth fighting?
Right.
Like, asking that question when you are like the most peaceful people on earth and you're just building farms is kind of like weird. So that's something we definitely wanted to avoid from the very beginning.
Right. Yeah. Levies and conscripts is what they're saying. Mercenaries. Anyway. So is there anything you heard from a previous OpenDev that we did improve on, but it just wasn't really enough? I know you kind of touched on a couple of those things earlier, but is there anything major that kind of we have to maybe try to go the extra little bit on them?
So, I mean, obviously the naval warfare,
Right.
there's still a way to go on that front. The pacing as well, I think that's one of those things that is we got this question during the press event, which was sort of like, are you aware there's like snowballing in the game? And you're sort of going, well, that's kind of like the number one like design challenge of building a 4X, right?
Yeah.
Or any kind of strategy game like this, because fundamentally it's kind of an investment game. You've got this layer of like, I guess, strategic, tactical, like territory management, but at the core it's making the right investment. And if you do that well, then you reap the rewards, and therefore you're kind of making the game easier for yourself. And so there's a huge challenge of trying to make sure that you can't make it too easy for yourself too quickly, and to introduce new challenges and so on.
Right.
It's quite an exciting kind of domain to be working in, because there's a lot to try and to invent, I think. But it is definitely always going to be something that we're up against, I think, in this kind of game.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some things, I know we've touched on this as well, but are there any main things we're doing to address some of the feedback that you touched on? I know you don't want to spoil too much, but are there any things that like are in idea form right now, or is there anything that's like already been implemented into the game?
Yeah, so loads and loads and loads of stuff. Loads and stuff. I mean, obviously, balancing is something that is constantly being worked on, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
So
we could give some of the examples of the things the press and creators got to try out already in the press build. Like, increasing the food consumption from 6 to 8,
Yes,
which that
exactly.
sounds like not much, but it's a third increase. Your people are a lot more hungry.
Yeah. So I had increased the FIMS produced by population from 4 to 6 because we felt that population wasn't a significant enough part of the economy. And the kind of obviously result of that is that, you now have each population assigned to food is producing as much as they consume. And so you have a quite different dynamic to the whole thing. So we had a lot more population, which meant a lot more followers, which meant religion was even more potent. So, we've had a look at the tenets to try and kind of rein them in a bit, but we've also had a look at the population, consumption. I'm just going to get my little list up here. Let me see. I mean, the population buyout as well was something that we had a look at. That was something that was kind of overpowered, I think, in Victor. The procession as well that I talked about earlier is something we've had a look at, and various other things like we had a certain amount of feedback, people talking about. Let me think. Sort of ranged units, for instance, being slightly overpowered, or nomadic hordes being overpowered. These are things we've also kind of worked on. So yeah, the disconnect that we have kind of between technology and era stars is something we're also working on. So in Victor, you would kind of tend to earn era stars more quickly than technology, which meant that eras tended to be quite short. And you'd have a feeling of, oh, I'm being left behind technologically in terms of where I should be.
Right.
So that's something we've kind of improved a little bit, both on the technology front and on the era star front. I mean, we're looking at making some quite significant changes in terms of influence. And I'm kind of questioning how much we should talk about at this at this juncture. So there are some surprises.
We can keep it a
for you.
surprise for sure.
Yeah,
But it's good to know that like you're thinking
yeah.
of that for sure.
But
We can keep it vague and just say, there will be more ways to spend your
yeah.
influence.
There was a feeling, I think, from a lot of players that you would sort of accumulate a huge amount of influence and kind of forget about it once the map started to be filled in. Because you'd be able to buy wonders, and you would be able to unlock artificial wonders, sorry, and you'd be able to merge cities together. But these are quite costly uses of your influence. And there weren't very many kind of small uses of influence. So that's something we really wanted to improve from Victor. And there are some decent changes that we're making in various different places in order to make sure that influence is something that you're kind of thinking about and using regularly. Because if you're not, then it's a shame. You have this resource that shows up in your interface at all times, and you're kind of forgetting about it. It's not ideal.
Yeah. I saw the question in chat, what is snowballing in 4X? Snowballing is when you start to get ahead, and because you're ahead, you start to get even more ahead, and it just snowballs. It's like you're pushing a snowball down a hill, and it just gets bigger and bigger.
And it becomes an avalanche.
Right, exactly.
Also, I just checked the blog. We've already confirmed one of the new uses of influence, namely, buying the civics with influence.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about
that. Because that simultaneously solves the whole you have all of these civics points and nothing to do with them issue.
Two birds, one stone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the idea is
you cannot use that metaphor. Saikana is in the chat.
Sorry. Two nasty people, one soft object that would still be used to throw at them. I'm not sure.
One pillow.
It is kind of violent, isn't it? Two birds, one stone.
Yeah.
Be violent. But in any case, the one of the ways of solving a problem is to sidestep it entirely. So on the one hand, we had this issue, right, of civics. You unlock civics and you don't have the civics points, or you have the civics points but you can't do anything with them, and either way it's kind of frustrating. And as a general rule, having a resource like that which you use for anything else is kind of a bit risky. Either you want always to be able to use it, like a skill point in an RPG. There's never a situation where you level up in say Diablo, or Diablo 2 rather, when you have skill points. You level up and they go, oh no, you haven't unlocked any of these skills to spend your skill points on.
Yeah.
So it's kind of dangerous to have a resource that only has one use, and then also to have those uses kind of locked. So the way we're solving that is essentially to say, oh, we'll use a different resource that already exists, and that happens to be a resource that we don't have a lot of kind of low and medium-sized uses for, which is influence. And it kind of makes sense as well. I mean, similarly to what we did in Endless Space 2 with the laws, you have this idea of your kind of political clout that you're using both as a means to expand your borders and kind of consolidate territory, and also as a way of establishing within that territory kind of what the laws are going to be, what the culture is going to be like. So we kind of liked the way that sort of that kind of felt thematically, narratively. And as you were saying before, Rogan, that kind of feel is important. The kind of the assonance of it.
Assonance, nice.
The harmony.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, buying laws with money might make sense from a mechanical standpoint, but it wouldn't quite feel right.
Right.
So yeah.
Nice. Well, maybe we can get to some chat questions at this point. What do you think of that, Will?
Sure. I see the chat has been pretty busy.
Yes. So Kat has taken some and tossed them in the Discord for me, so I can read them here.
And just for everybody who has asked questions, if you've asked a question and we're not answering it today, it's probably a question that we can't answer for one reason or another, because we don't know the answer, or like I just saw the question come up 3 times if we add like day-night cycle and seasons and stuff to the map, and that's like we need to talk to the artists for that, and they're not here, so we can't answer that. So if we're not answering a question, it's not that we're necessarily denying you information. It's that we possibly don't know ourselves.
Yeah.
Or we can't talk about it for other reasons, because William can confirm that a lot of the times there are multiple solutions being looked at, and when one isn't settled, we can't really talk about it.
Yeah, you get a lot of people, they go into a meeting room with like a baseball bat, and then you see who comes out with the smallest number of bruises.
Right, yeah.
That's how we did.
This is why you're a lead designer. As Australian, you were predisposed to win those arguments.
I do a lot of pleading, begging. please make my feature.
Crying. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with Dragon Gaming's question. Will we be able to have different governments, like a monarchy, dictatorship, or democratic government?
Yeah, so we have we have various types of government that you can bring in using kind of the civic system. So democratic republic, or oligarchy, one party state, absolute monarchy, constitutional monarchy, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's through the civic system that you can select those options. So yeah, and there are kind of later game kind of civics that will be available that will give you those access to those.
Yeah. Another question. I don't have the name here, sorry. Are you guys thinking of expanding the ability of naval units to be able to initiate land battles or sieges if a unit or city tile is adjacent to the sea tile?
Yeah. So something I'd really like, and that I've wanted to see for a while, is because the problem of covering an island entirely in districts, so that it's not possible to land troops, was something that very much occurred to me while thinking of the systems early on. And I think it's something that kind of we put it to one side and didn't implement it in the first iteration. It's something I'd really like but we don't have it yet. So yeah, these are things that I would like to see. Other things like being able to attack a land army with ships. I'm a little bit more hesitant, just because I'm concerned it might lead to battles in certain circumstances, which are a little bit kind of anticlimactic, where you just have like all these ships that are like, oh, I want to shoot you, and all the land units are like, no, I'm gonna stay, you know,
Don't do
uh,
that.
in this forest and just wait for the timer to run out,
Right.
So like I'm a little bit concerned about allowing battles to be initiated when, the defender has a clear way of just kind of essentially denying an actual battle from happening.
Yeah.
However, if you have like embarked units in that army, and you wanted to launch an attack, say, on a city, that's something I would like to see. But it really is going to depend on how much like pleading and crying I do, and how much
Yeah.
how much again, all of these things need to be looked at in terms of so much to do, so little time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, judging by your acting skills, your Shakespeare skills, the crying and pleading will probably just come natural to you.
Yeah, I'm only lead designer because I'm so good at crying and pleading.
Exactly.
That's
There you
on the
go.
job description. They had that like as the first line.
There's a sigh at first.
Yeah.
Lead designer. Okay. So, um, aisle 9. Are we going to get hints about how to unlock civics? I guess.
Yeah, this is something we've discussed. It's one of those things that's a little bit kind of on the one hand, we don't want you to be approaching the civic system from the point of view of like every game I want to unlock every civics. It is supposed to be a little bit more like the precise civics that you have access to on a given playthrough are determined by what that playthrough was. So it's not like, Pokemon got to catch them all kind of situation. At the same time, I recognize that we're getting these kind of comments. So what I'm thinking at the moment, what we're thinking at the moment is putting together like a little kind of hint tooltip for each one that can kind of guide you in the right direction. Um, but yeah, we'll see. In any case, we've definitely heard that feedback loud and clear. And I think there is a certain amount of frustration around that question that stems also from the fact that people often have civics points that they can't spend. So you're kind of going, I have 3 civics points. If only I knew how to unlock this civics.
Right.
So if that system changes, there may be less frustration. So I kind of like to see how that kind of plays out a little bit. At the same time, yeah, it's definitely something we're considering.
Cool. Um, Luca underscore Argentieri or Argentieri.
Mm.
Do you guys feel like the game progresses too fast in Humankind? I think you obtain era stars too quickly and research technology too slowly.
Yes, a game on normal pace is meant to last about 300 turns. We gave people 150 for Victor, despite the fact that kind of if you do the maths on that, you end up kind of more like 200 turns for the end of era 4, so around about 50 turns per era. And that's also because we kind of wanted to challenge people a little bit and not give people, kind of keep people hungry.
Mm.
But yeah, we do feel that the progression of era advancement is too fast, because we're not in that interval. And yes, the pace of technological unlocking, maybe I think it's a little bit too slow, but maybe I think the problem is more on the era star side. So yeah, that's something we are working on at the moment.
Yeah. From RNGeezer, are more catch-up mechanics intended to help struggling cultures?
Yeah, so this is something we've had a lot as well, and it again kind of ties back into the whole snowball issue, you know. So, you know, a catch-up mechanic, you know, people often wouldn't think of it as a catch-up mechanic, but like expansion disapproval in Endless Legend, Endless Space 2 is a catch-up mechanic. Because it is what is called a negative feedback. You know, so positive feedback is like the more you win, the more you win, and negative feedback is like the blue tortoiseshell. Like, you know, we're essentially putting the brakes on.
Mm.
So, you know, there are things that we can fiddle with in terms of pure balancing, like unit upkeep, you know, and you know, city upkeep and stability. Like, you know, if building more districts has a higher stability penalty, then those who are further in front, you know, will, you know, need to invest more in infrastructure, you know, like creating commons quarters. I don't mean literally infrastructures, but, you know, setting up trade routes and so on. So I think part of the solution is going to be economic. Part of the solution is going to be the AI. I think the AI needs to, and this is already kind of a little bit the case, but we need to definitely make sure that the AI is aware of the ranking, is aware of where everyone is situated. The ideal would be to have kind of like a federation form to try and take on the player who is in front, or maybe the AI who is in front and the player could be included in that federation. The tricky thing with that is always to make sure it doesn't feel like contrived. You know, it's like, oh, you know, I'm winning. Everyone's just, my best friend is suddenly declaring war on me. You know,
Yeah.
I remember, I can't remember which 4X that was in, but I think it might have been one of the civilizations, or at some point you sort of X turns from the end, and suddenly everyone attacks you. You know,
I think you might not be thinking of a 4X. There was Total War Shogun 2 had the realm break, I think they called it,
uh,
where it's like, oh, you have like more than half of Japan, you're poised to become shogun, and suddenly the clan you've been allied with since the start of the game turns on you and
yeah,
stabs you in the back because
Right.
you're close to winning and so.
yes, you kind of need to balance between like uh, and it all comes back to this kind of, you know, the dichotomy, people talking about the wargaming versus tabletop RPG, you know, like gamist, narrativist, I don't know how to speak English anymore, kind of
I buy it.
dichotomy, you know, of like you have these mechanical imperatives, um, but then you also have like, oh, I need to make sure that in terms of the narrative, like if this person has been established as my best friend forever, that continues to be the case. Otherwise, you know, you lose that kind of. I was talking about in the press tour about the, you know, the chain of causality. You know, um, you need to be able to predict what's going to happen, because if you can't, you're frustrated.
Right.
You know, the once upon a time, there was a beautiful princess who dreamed of becoming a racing car driver. Every day she practiced racing cars. Then one day she tripped in the stairs and broke her leg. You go, what? That, you know, the
That
end.
sucks.
What?
Yeah.
No, there was
So
there
not
was
a
no indication. That is an unfair story, right?
yeah.
It is unfair because nothing provided the slightest bit of you know, hint that that was going to happen.
Right.
And so, you know, the idea of unfairness applies really equally to games and narratives, because you kind of it's the same brain dealing with these things, you
Hmm.
know. We live a game as a narrative, I think.
Right.
um, Sorry, I'm going off into kind of cloud cuckoo philosophy land again. Maybe we should move on to the next question before I start waxing lyrical too much. uh,
I like
Mission
that
for
stuff.
new regular stream segment: game design philosophy with William.
Amazing.
yeah.
That would be a banger. Um, all right. Couple more here. Salterius asks, are there any plans to change things around the stability system?
Yeah, so right now, I'm thinking the Commons Quarter could probably do with a little bit of a nerf. It might be nice to have it more focused on influence production rather than stability production.
Mm,
I feel like it kind of completely like solves the problem once you have access to it. The games as well, they're repeatable. We were talking about with Kat the other day. I mean, the increase in terms of cost is pretty exponential
I mean, I
for
guess,
repeatable.
in the end, the long and short of it is no big changes to the system, but still tweaking the numbers.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Thank you for pulling me out of the reeds there, Steph. I was getting into the reeds. I like the reeds. They're nice and reedy. Let's stay high level. Thanks, Salteris, for the question.
And then this is the last one that I have here. Alethier asks, "Is war exhaustion getting looked at? I had a war where I killed one of their scouts and did nothing else. After a while, they became my vassal."
Yeah, so this is definitely something that we are looking at, though at this present juncture, I can't really say exactly where we're going to go with this. We recognize that in terms of vassalage, if possible, I would like the cost to be like relative to the relative sizes of the empires. So like if you're really small and you want to make a vassal out of a huge empire, then you'll need to do really, really well in the war. And then the formula for calculating like war score at the end of the war, right? You have war support on one side, war support on the other side. You mix them together, and that makes the war score, and that's what's used to determine how many things you can buy. So there's the cost of those things, especially vassalage, which I think needs to be dynamic. But there's also the formula for defining it. But I don't have a clear answer today on exactly how we're going to fiddle around with that.
Yeah.
But we'd like to. We'd like to.
Yeah, but would you say that in the end, the goal is that here still you want, that chain of causality, because the situation the player described here is one of those things where that kind of
Yeah.
breaks us. Yeah, we killed one of your scouts and now you're our vassal. That
Yeah.
feels
I mean,
wrong.
it's an excellent example of like, it's exactly like the princess who wanted to become a racing car driver. Once upon a time, I had a war where I killed one of their scouts and did nothing else. After a while, they became my vassal. Do you see what I mean? Like,
It's not a satisfying story.
exactly. And the goal is to create an engine for satisfying stories.
Right.
Um, on a certain level, that just essentially means good game design. But yeah,
It's a nice way to put it.
I like to think of it like that.
Yeah.
It's I'm very much for those who are interested in the kind of the theory of game design. I'm a huge proponent of Brian Upton's work. So if you want to read up on his books, he's written a couple, so go and check that out.
Go and check it out. Brian Upton?
Upton, yes, as in
okay.
Upton Girl.
Wow, singing on stream, Will.
It sounded better in my head. There are a lot of things sometimes.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, that's all the questions we have. We were reading from Twitch and YouTube there. We just couldn't get to all of them, and some we just couldn't answer. So, thanks everybody for your questions. I think that's pretty much all we have for today. Went for almost an hour. If anybody else has any more questions, anything else comes to mind, you can hit us up on Twitter at HumanKindGame. You can also follow Will on Twitter. It's at Will Be Fast, right? With one L.
It's with one L, as in it's a combination between Wilberforce and Belfast.
Nice, love it. But yeah, that's pretty much it, everybody. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for all of your feedback on the Victor OpenDev and the OpenDevs that came before it. It was really awesome. We look forward to you guys playing the game again. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope everybody has a great weekend. I know it's only Thursday, but we just got Friday left, so it's going to be a good one. Will, do you have any parting words?
Yeah, look, just, I mean, thank you, really. It seems trite, but the players have again, really picked the build apart, given us extremely insightful feedback, dug into kind of like for some people really dug into the mathematics of everything, and it's great. It's really, really useful to us. It keeps us, it keeps us motivated and inspired that we have people who care about what we're doing. And people have been really, for the most part, really nice, and constructive. So look, thanks a lot. And yeah, I mean, coming August 17, I hope you'll be there to raise a virtual toast to release with us.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Amazing. All right. Thanks, everybody. This has been me, Rogan, Will, and Steph, the cat of nine tails, off screen. And thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next Thursday. We'll be back with some playing some endless games. I don't know what exactly yet, but we'll be in the same place on Twitch, and on YouTube we'll be on the Endless channel. So look out for that. Amazing. Have a good one, everybody. See you later.
Yep.
See ya.
See you later.